They didn't lock the doors. They didn't threaten your freedom. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't need to. They built a cage you couldn't see. One made of emotions, of guilt, of fear, of obligation. A cage that said, if you leave, you hurt us. If you change, you abandon us. If you grow, you betray us. And so you stayed. Not because you couldn't leave, but because you couldn't bear the emotional cost of choosing yourself. You folded your wings. You softened your voice. You dimmed your dreams, not because you were weak, but because you were trained to protect the system by shrinking inside it. This video is about that cage, the one they never mentioned, the one they never admitted building, the one they depended on to keep you close, not through love, but through leverage. Now it's time to see it, to name it, and to walk out of it without burning yourself down, to do it. Emotional cage, exit, initiated. Part 1. What is the emotional family cage? The emotional family cage isn't built with words, or walls, or punishments. It's built with feelings you were trained to fear, guilt, disappointment, sadness, shame. It's the structure that says, you're free to live your life as long as it doesn't hurt us. You're free to succeed as long as you don't surpass our comfort. You're free to change as long as you still make us feel needed. The bars are emotional, but the effect is structural. You move, not by instinct, but by anticipated reactions. You don't choose freely. You choose to minimize damage. The emotional family cage isn't about rules you can break. It's about invisible currents you're taught to swim with. Currents that say, keep peace at all costs. Protect their feelings before your own. Dim your needs if they conflict with theirs. Absorb responsibility that isn't yours. All without being told. All without needing reminders. Because survival taught you, keeping them emotionally stable is how I stay safe. You can move out, cut conversations, change cities, but if you still fear disappointing them, if you still hesitate when your truth rises, if you still calculate how your joy might make them ache, you're still inside the cage, not physically, energetically, emotionally, and until you see the bars, until you stop protecting the feelings that were never your job to carry, you're not living freely. You're negotiating existence inside a system that depends on your emotional captivity. Part 2. How the cage was built around you. They didn't say, you must stay small. They didn't command, you must not outgrow us. They didn't have to. They built the cage through emotional architecture. It started with conditional approval. You felt their pride when you followed the script, when you made choices. That didn't challenge their comfort. You felt their withdrawal. When you deviated, when you questioned, when you dared to expand beyond the limits they could understand, it was reinforced by silent disappointment. No shouting, no direct confrontation, just a shift in energy, a cooling of connection, a subtle, heavy sadness. You were made responsible for, and you learned, when I stay aligned with their expectations, I'm loved. When I diverge, I hurt them. And hurting them became synonymous with betrayal. It deepened through unspoken contracts, unwritten but deeply understood. We keep the family close. We don't speak hard truths. We don't disrupt the legacy. We don't rise too far beyond the story. If you comply, you stay chosen. If you don't, you risk becoming an outsider, an emotional exile. The cage tightened every time you minimized your truth to preserve their peace, every time you held your dreams tighter rather than risk being too much, every time you stayed silent when your soul wanted to speak, not because you were weak, but because you were trained to believe that loving them meant locking parts of yourself away. You didn't choose the cage, you inherited it, you maintained it, and now you're the only one who can walk out of it, not by fighting, not by proving, but by recognizing I was never supposed to stay where I had to shrink to be safe. Part 3. Symptoms you're still living inside the cage. You moved out, you grew up, you built a new life, but the cage, it stayed inside you, not as a place, as a pattern. Here's how you know you're still living in it. You filter your success through their emotional comfort. Before you celebrate, before you fully step into your achievements, you pause. You wonder, will this make them feel left behind? Will they think I've forgotten them? You dim your own victories, not because you're ungrateful, but because you're still managing their feelings about your expansion. You feel guilty for prioritizing yourself. Every time you choose your truth over their approval, every time you honor your growth over their comfort, you don't just feel powerful, you feel selfish, wrong, disloyal, as if freedom itself is some kind of betrayal. That's not truth, that's conditioning. You anticipate emotional punishment without any words spoken. You don't need a lecture or an argument or disownment. You feel it preemptively, the sadness, the coldness, the silent judgment. So you adjust, you shrink, you soften, not because they asked, but because the cage taught you to. You measure your worth by how much you protect their feelings. You're good when you're predictable, when you don't cause discomfort, when you prioritize their peace over your passion. You wear compliance as a badge of loyalty. But deep down, you know, they love the version of me that doesn't threaten their limits. Not the full version, not the unfiltered one, not the free one. You still calculate your choices to avoid emotional exile. You don't ask, what's right for my path? You ask, what keeps me close? You don't prioritize your calling. You prioritize your belonging. And the cost is your sovereignty. Every single day you stay in the cage. These are not random struggles. They are the echoes of a system that taught you your freedom is dangerous. Our comfort is your duty. And until you stop protecting the cage, you'll keep living inside it, even with the door wide open. Part 4. Why you must escape strategically. You don't escape an emotional cage by fighting the walls, by screaming your truth, by trying to make them understand. You escape by becoming too free, to fit back inside, silently, steadily, strategically. If you fight loudly, you trigger the system's defense mechanisms. They guilt you harder. They dramatize your distance. They weaponize your freedom because emotional systems fear what they can no longer control. And when you resist loudly, you give them evidence. See, you're the problem. See, you're selfish. See, you're unstable. The cage strengthens itself through your visible rebellion. True escape is quiet, unapologetic, non-negotiable. You move different, choose different, prioritize different, not with announcements, not with debates, not with emotional appeals. With certainty, you're not asking to be understood. You're not seeking validation. You're not proving your case. You're simply refusing to shrink for the comfort of a system. That depends on your limitation. This is why the strategy matters. You don't activate unnecessary resistance. You don't waste energy convincing people who are invested in your stagnation. You don't lose momentum to emotional battles. You can't win because they were never meant to be fair. You conserve power. You rewire loyalty. You reclaim sovereignty silently, irreversibly, because the real escape isn't being loud enough to be heard. It's being free enough that you no longer need their permission to exist. Part 5. How to escape the emotional cage without destroying yourself. Freedom doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to leave a trail of fire. It just has to be complete. Here's how you exit cleanly. Step 1. Sever emotional permission loops. Stop waiting for approval, for blessing, for silent nods. You don't need their endorsement. To become who you are, you needed it once, you don't now. Declare internally, I am no longer seeking clearance for my existence. And move. Step 2. Reduce energetic reporting. Stop sending updates. Stop signaling success. For validation, stop circling back emotionally to manage their reactions. Move without broadcasting. Succeed without narrating. Expand without apologizing. Because every check-in is another chain. Step 3. Maintain strategic emotional neutrality. Don't provoke. Don't defend. Don't over-explain your distance. When they express disappointment, sadness, confusion, stay neutral, not cold, not cruel, just unmovable. Because neutrality starves the cage's power source. It can't feed on guilt if you refuse to produce it. Step 4. Anchor new identity behaviors. Act as the person who no longer lives inside the cage. Take bigger risks. Speak harder truths. Prioritize inner peace over external approval. Build a new rhythm that isn't calibrated around minimizing impact on others, because true freedom is a practiced posture, not a one-time outburst. Step 5. Hold the line through the echoes. There will be pullback. There will be emotional noise. There will be accusations of change. Let it echo. Let it die. Your job is not to manage their emotions, about your liberation. Your job is to stay free, not louder, not harsher, just unreachable. You don't owe explanations for escaping a system that survived by keeping you small. You owe allegiance only to the version of you that refuses to fold back into silence. Part 6. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just final. You don't have to fight for your freedom. You don't have to argue for it. You don't have to explain why you deserve it. You just have to claim it, silently, steadily, finally. Real escape doesn't come with a big announcement, or a grand rebellion, or a dramatic confrontation. It comes with one quiet decision: I'm not shrinking back to keep this system comfortable. And then you live different, without debate, without performance, without apology. Freedom isn't always heard. Sometimes it's simply felt in your absence, from the roles you were trained to play, in your refusal, to shrink for expectations you never agreed to, in your calm indifference, toward the emotional games that once held you hostage. They'll feel the shift, they'll notice the distance, they'll react. Let them. You're not leaving to hurt them, you're leaving. Because your soul outgrew the cage they built to survive. And it's not your job to stay small, to keep them safe. From this point forward, you move without explanation. You choose without hesitation. You exist without permission. Because real freedom isn't loud, it's final. CTA. For the next 72 hours, don't defend your freedom. Don't explain your distance. Don't narrate your escape. Just move. Just build. Just exist fully. Because true sovereignty isn't something you announce. It's something you live without looking back. Emotional cage exit complete.